Greetings and welcome to the third episode of Drawing Etc. while reading Pratchett, or D.E.R.P for short, where I read the Discworld series in a published order and then do something art-related based on the book I just finished. Today's episode is on equal rights. I've not really mentioned this with the two previous books, but let's talk about the cover. The original covers of the books were done by Josh Kirby, who kept illustrating the covers of the series until his death in 2001. Paul Kidby, who took over illustrating the Discworld books upon Josh Kirby's passing, painted his portrait onto the cover art of the novel Nightwatch, according to Wikipedia. Also, this here apparently is a self-cameo by the artist. We're going to look for Kirby's portrait on Nightwatch once I get to that book. Now, I'm not a big fan of this art style, and it's incredibly inaccurate when it comes to these books. I mean, look at this. Two-Flower, who obviously wore glasses and thus was called Four Eyes at one point in the books, is drawn as some four-eyed monstrosity. Helena, the henna-haired harridan, is almost offensively underdressed. Rincewind looks 40 years older than he should be. Cohen is somehow sporting a mouthful of teeth over here, and I don't even know who that is supposed to be. I don't have anything new to say about the first cover that I haven't already covered just now, and the third cover, oh boy. This next bit I've taken directly off Elspeth. In a 1987 interview for a university magazine, Terry Pratchett said that one thing that had tickled him about Josh Kirby's artwork for the Equal Rights cover was that it subliminally, accidentally, reflected the Freudian overtones of the book. References to hot dreams, the angst of adolescence, things that might be called magic envy. Kirby's artwork coincidentally draws Esk with a broom handle where a penis would be, traditionally supposed to be the basis of the witches flying around on broomsticks myth. Back when I was searching for the reason the artwork changed halfway through the series and read a bunch of articles on the matter, I found, to my surprise, that Pratchett had pretty much no say over the cover artwork while collaborating with Kirby. I don't remember the exact quote, but it was along the lines of, "I don't tell you how to write the books, so you don't tell me how to illustrate the covers." Ignoring all the weirdness happening over here, like this David star, for example, look how he butchered our beloved Granny. She specifically looked nothing like this. Right, deep breaths, cover art rant over, all good. I started reading the book while waiting for my daughter's gymnastic class to start. I was admiring the opening sequence again when she sat next to me and started reading out loud. She's been learning to read in English for the past few weeks and practices every chance she gets. Fortunately, she got distracted right before she got halfway through the second paragraph, specifically this part. Because this is also a story about sex, although probably not in the athletic tumbling count the legs and divide by 2 cents unless the characters get totally beyond the author's control. They might. I was not prepared to explain all of those bits out loud to my daughter while stuck in a small room with fussy kids and their equally fussy parents. Other than the potentially embarrassing situation I so narrowly avoided, this is another wonderful opening. It's got sound effects playing in your brain and a shiny simile involving dandruff. If you haven't read it yet, you totally should. An old dying wizard makes his way to a village with a pretty badass name. He finds the smith, who is an 8th son with 7 sons already, who is waiting for his wife, who's currently in labor with their 8th child. An 8th son of an 8th son is a wizard. So this old wizard guy traveled all the way over to this village of badass, and yes, that's what it's called, to sort of pass on his sort of wizardness to a sort of successor. This is a direct quote from the book. The newborn is brought out, and ignoring the protests of the midwife, who is a bit later revealed to be none other than my favorite Granny Weatherwax herself, the baby's tiny little hand grips the staff and the magic is passed on. The wizard then dies immediately, and for some reason inhibits the apple tree that grows where he's buried. Still unclear how that happened. Probably something to do with them time monks changing things, as no one else, as far as I remember, haunts anything ever in later books. They're just escorted onto whichever afterlife they believe in by death. Maybe the wizard believed he turned into a tree. That might explain it. I mean, he did mention reincarnation to Death, who strongly advised against it. But I suppose that's what he went with in the end, being reincarnated as a tree. That would make sense. Only at the very end of the book, he's reincarnated as one of the ants, where it's hinted that he finally decided to go with reincarnation after all. So maybe the tree was like the waiting period because he hadn't decided what he wanted to do. I guess maybe that makes sense. So anyway, as we've already guessed, the newborn baby is a girl, and thus the world was given its very first female wizard. On the disc, only men can be wizards, and only women can be witches, and either would be greatly insulted and offended at the thought suggesting otherwise. The book could be divided into two parts. The first is where Granny Weatherwax refuses to accept the fact that Esk is a wizard and is trying to make a witch out of her. And the second part, where she's helping Esk get the equal rights and rights of a wizard in order to learn to control her powers and go study at the Unseen University and stuff. The title of the book is yet another clever pun about the struggles of a female wizard making her way in the Discworld. Esk is roughly the same age as Tiffany in the first Tiffany book, and similar to Tiffany, she is pretty mature and responsible for her age, performing great feats of magic intuitively and without much proper training. I have mixed feelings about the ending. On the one hand, it's pretty open, hinting at all sorts of relationships without saying anything for certain, making me want to keep reading on about these characters, especially Esk. But on the other hand, none of them are ever mentioned again except for Granny and the Librarian, and the following witches books don't really mention Esk or Granny's involvement with the Unseen University at all. I think she has some kind of friendship with the next Archancellor, Ritcully, if that's how I pronounce his name. With the troll, I remember they have some kind of interaction, but doesn't really mention this guy who seems to have a little bit of a crush on her. Oh well. Basically, it's like this story never happened. Those damn time monks messing things up again. It's kind of sad because I'd love to have Esk mentioned at least once. And as far as I remember, she's not. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'll catch it in one of the following books. There are just a couple of the notes I wrote where this story is basically the origin of Granny's I ain't dead note that she holds whenever she goes burrowing, so that she's never mistaken for a corpse again, like in the beginning of this book. We also learn a lot about hadology, which is a recurring theme in the witches books. There is also the first mention in the Discworld books of the 1 to a million chances, like 9 out of 10, that's like a certain thing that's gonna happen, which is again a repeated theme in the following books as well. And I think that's it. I liked this book more than the previous two because I love Granny Weatherwax. She's amazing. Pretty much any of her interactions with any of the other side domain characters, they were all my favorite bits. I think that's it. I think I've covered most of my notes. Thank you for watching and listening if you made it this far. And I'll see you in the next one, which is Mort, and it's all about death. I'll be off ski then. Bye!